Yo, yo, my peoples, I'm Amy.E, and welcome to the 61st episode of EasyCast. Today, we have an amazing guest named Boris Hiestand. He voices Sigma in Overwatch, does animation, is director for other shows, and he does many, many things, and we're here to speak with him today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. Let's get into it.
Thank you. What's something you want to get into straight away?
Just tell us a bit about yourself. Like, what do you do exactly for those that like are coming in? Who's this Boris guy? Like, I only know Boris from UK, the Prime Minister. Like, it's only Boris I know. So you gotta let us know about yourself. What do you do? What's the passion that you follow?
Yeah, I'm Boris, and I'm not that Prime Minister guy. Thankfully, he's gone out of here. In
Yeah,
the
that's
80s,
true.
there was a Boris Becker, and then in the 90s, there was a Boris Yeltsin. And then Boris Johnson came along, and
Lot of
everyone
Boris.
said, "Oh, Boris, you got a great name. It's interesting. Oh, Boris Yeltsin, Boris Johnson, yeah, yeah." And then slowly, Boris Johnson turned into a very unlikable character, and now
Yeah.
no one
Yeah.
wants to talk to me anymore. But no, it's got nothing to do with me. Um, I'm from Holland originally, and I lived there until I was 18. And when I was
Oh,
14, I
wow.
Wow.
developed an intense passion for animation and everything kind of
Wow.
film, storytelling, filmmaking, but especially animation. And but Holland was quite small, well, still is quite small. But now it's got a
Yeah.
more of a buzzing film community and industry. But at that time, this is in the mid 90s, that didn't really exist there. And apart from the independent kind of cinema and filmmakers, but there wasn't a big commercial scene out there. And I wanted to, at the time, I was a big Disney fan, and I wanted to do kind of
Yeah.
hand drawn,
Ooh.
and beautiful animation,
Yeah. At the
feature
time.
quality
Yeah.
Yeah.
animation. And but a lot of this stuff was happening in London, so I moved to England to pursue that really, and I studied in England for 3 years at the what was called the Surrey Institute of Art and Design in Farnham in Surrey, and then I
Wow.
kind of entered the industry and started as a 2D animator and worked on a bunch of television series and features, and then slowly the work in 2D animation started to dry up in the mid 2000s. So I kind of at the time reluctantly felt that I was forced into CG, but I kind of took to it and I liked it, and I've been animating in CG ever since, and worked on a bunch of films here and there, and then started getting more into supervising animation, and then the last 8 years I've been mainly directing television, and alongside that
Wow.
I kind of fell into voice acting because I was always just acting like an idiot and making silly voices and being stupid and thinking I was funny and annoying people. And then
Yeah.
and it kind of led to jobs here and there, and then that became kind of bigger and bigger, and it's been a really fun kind of sideline gig for me ever since. But I think most people out there might know me for doing voices, but my main thing was and is still working in the animation industry.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like
That's
that's
me.
gone underappreciated. Like
Yeah.
the people in the animation industry and like CGI, like not a lot of people, like, yes, it's in the credits of movies and stuff, but they don't really appreciate like the people behind it. And we wanted to get your opinion on like what, first of all, what is your favorite movie that you've worked on or TV series
Or game, right?
or
Yeah.
game that, because you have done animation for a game, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, I have. Yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
what would be your favorite? Yeah.
um, I think my favorite film was Guardians of the Galaxy, um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's a big film, and but as you say,
Oh yeah.
when you're working on these big films, and I've worked on quite a few of those, you do tend to be a very small cog in a very big machine. So the amount of creative input that you get to have tends to be quite minimal.
Yeah.
And if you keel over and die in the middle of the production of a film,
Mm.
they'll get someone else in, and the film doesn't really look any different. Even if you were never involved in the first place, the film will probably be more or less the same thing. So
Yeah.
that can be a little disappointing. But you get a different kind of kick out of it. It's not so much how much you are a part of a film, but just the fact that you get to make characters act, and you get to move characters
Like
around in
bring
interesting
life into
ways.
something.
Yeah, exactly. To breathe life into something. That's just that in and of itself. It's the process, I think, that is really the reward for most people that I know in animation as animators. They just love the process of getting down and dirty and
Yeah.
and crafting a performance and an acting, I've had some of the best experiences on some of the worst films,
Yeah.
and some of the worst experiences on some of the best films. So it's not always about the how successful a film is or how good a film is that makes the experience rewarding for those people who work on it. Um, but Guardians was great because it was a good film. At least
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
opinion. It's subjective, of course. Some
Yeah, it
people might
is.
hate
Yeah,
it.
no,
I thought it was
I think
great.
everyone agrees.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, to be really honest, I like the superhero genre. I mean, maybe not so much now anymore because it's been so overdone now. But at that time,
Yeah.
even then, I already thought like, oh, I'm getting a bit tired of these superhero films every year. There's several,
Yeah.
and that was at the time. This is already 10 years ago. But Guardians was kind of a
Wow.
breath of fresh air, and it didn't take itself too seriously, and it was a different take on it, and it was just a real fun film. And to have two characters in that film fully animated, Rocket and Groot. That was just so much fun to work on those characters. To have because a lot of those films are full of animation, but they tend to be explosions and fireballs and spaceships, and there's a lot of CG and there's a lot of animation, but none of it tends to be character driven because the characters tend to be real people. But to have a film where two of the main characters are fully animated, that was just a joy to work on. Plus the fact that Marvel is so secretive, they only ever showed us the bits that we were working on. And so
Really?
what that meant
Okay.
is that I got to be deeply involved in a very small part of the making of that film. But when I went to see it, I felt just like any other member of the audience because I had no idea, I basically hadn't seen three-quarters of the film yet. So I could just sit there
Yeah.
and just watch it as if it was the first time, because it was the first time.
Yeah.
And that was just really cool
Wow.
to be part of something that was good and to also be able to experience it like any other member of the audience. That was just fantastic. Because a lot of the time you work on these films and you see it again and again and again and again. And by the time you
Yeah,
finished it, you
yeah.
never want to see the damn thing again. You just want to do something else
Yeah.
and get away from it. But that was fun. And I think in terms of
Wow.
video games,
Yeah.
it would have to be Ori and the Will of the
Yeah.
Wisps.
Ori, yeah.
But admittedly,
played
that's
that
really
one, right?
kind
I
of
played
the
a bit of
only
it, yeah.
game that I was really kind of heavily involved in. After
Yeah.
that, I mean, we can talk about that later if you like. After that,
Yeah,
I
100%.
started to work on this new game, which is now in early access release, called No Rest for the Wicked, and that was fantastic
Yes.
as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
But I left that game early on as one of the game devs to direct this TV series that I've now been on for nearly 3 years. I think it's been two
Oh, wow.
seasons.
Wow.
And but I'm still in touch with them, and I've helped them out with a lot of the voices in that game. So I'm in the game doing a lot of different character voices, but I wasn't so much involved with the animation and storytelling side of it, which I did do on Ori, and that was wonderful. I really really loved that experience.
I was gonna ask, do you have your own like studio at home to do your voice acting, or do you ever have to go in person and do it, or like how's the communication work for that?
I think that I mean I do have a little setup here. It's not the best setup, but when COVID happened, I thought I need to keep doing stuff, and I want to keep doing stuff.
Yeah.
And everyone was a bit more lenient, and the studio said, and the clients were all saying, well, have you got a setup? And yes, I do. And I invested at the time in a setup, so I can, and I have recorded from home, and that goes quite well. But there's nothing really that beats being in a room with someone who gives you direction, and also to have an audio engineer, who really plays with the
Yeah.
levels and the gain and the volume and selects the takes and puts it all together for the client while you do your thing. It means that you don't have to worry about anything. Every time I record from home, I'm always going like, oh, are the gain levels, are they okay? Am I not blowing? Technically, I'm always worried about, is the audio quality good? Because I can be screaming into a microphone for an
Yeah.
hour, but if the quality isn't good, then I have to do the whole thing again, and that's not ideal. So
Oh yeah.
to not have to worry about the technicalities of it, and to have direct contact with a client who are potentially actually there in the studio, that is something that's just, you can't really replace that by working from home. But it is of course very convenient. So every now and again I do a little thing from home, but I tend to go into London to one of the many recording studios to do work from.
Wow. So the studios are based in London. So if you ever had to go do something, you'd have to go to London to do something like that, or is there anything like nearby around you?
There are a few small studios. It's funny actually. There was a little job that I did yesterday, and we were kind of scrambling because I'm going to, and again it'll happen in a couple of weeks because I'm going back to Holland next week to see my family and friends for a few
Nice,
weeks.
nice. Yeah.
And a job came up and they said, "Hey, you want to do it? Are you available?" And I said, "Well, I kind of am, but not really. I just don't have access to my home studio, or I can't come into London because I'm in Holland." And they said, "Oh, we'll find a studio there." And I happened to be in
Oh wow.
Groningen, which is very north of the country, and I had to kind of look for, and I just just looked up a little studios over there and got in touch with them, and then one of them said, "Yeah, we'll have you." And so I'll be recording over there in a couple of weeks. And the same happened yesterday. You kind of I've been scrambling to find local studios before. There's always audio studios nearby. I'm sure there's
Yeah, yeah.
dozens, not hundreds, in Sydney as well. And you can
Oh
always,
yeah,
Yeah, they
if you
probably
need to
would
record
be.
something, you can do it.
yeah,
That's
100%.
true. That's true. I was wondering like how the process works in terms of like, for example, like for Overwatch and how Blizzard would contact you, or how like the process works to see. Do you have like a what's it called, a character demo that you would hand in as like an audition, or do they reach out to you and then you go on like that and you work from there, or how does the process work?
I just finished a new character demo for games and for animation. I thought it was high time because I hadn't really done that. Well, I think I made one. It must have been almost 10 years ago now. And I
Oh
thought
wow.
I need to update this because it's just got lots of old stuff on there, and I've done a lot of things in the last couple of years, so I need to update it. So I've done that, and I think that most voice actors will have a character demo. I'm with an agent, and this
Yeah,
agent has a
yeah.
website, and it's a London-based agent, and people can go on there and look at profiles. They've got lots of little samples on there of different types of voices, male, female, and so people can get a sense of what they want. And although usually the agents help, and I think in terms of Blizzard, I think because Overwatch is such an international game, and I had the same with other games.
Yeah,
There's games that are developed in the US or in
yeah,
Canada.
Yeah.
I've done some stuff for Ubisoft on Assassin's Creed, which I believe
yeah,
Yeah,
is
yeah, I
yeah,
located
saw
yeah.
that.
in
Yeah.
Canada, right? So
Yes.
then
Mm.
I think the casting does happen from there, but they tend to cast their net out quite wide. I mean, in that case, it was all about Vikings, so they were looking for Scandinavian types. So they obviously came to Europe and
Ah,
Scandinavia to look for Scandinavians. And I think it was the same with
yeah.
Overwatch. They were looking for someone Dutch for this character
Yeah.
Sigma. So I'm sure they must have sent out the casting to Holland as well. At least I assume so. I mean, they never told me that they did, but uh,
Yeah.
I'm sure they looked in the US as well. I mean, there's loads of Dutch people there, but I was lucky enough that I heard about it. My agent said, "Yeah, there's an audition for this Dutch character. Do you want to do it?" And then they just book in a little bit of space in a London studio, and it was the same with Assassin's Creed. Once they cast you, they don't ask you to come over to Canada or to the US because that would be a waste of time and money, right? They have a local studio,
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
they hire the local studio, and then the director calls in over satellite. And then, although in my case for Blizzard for Overwatch, the voice director, this lovely lady called Andrea Toyas, she was actually there in London at the time, and that was just a
Oh
coincidence. I
wow.
think and so she was there, and that was great. And so I did an audition, and then I got the part. And every time they record people who are here, Tracer is here
Yeah.
as well, Cara Theobald,
Yeah.
and I think and Zarya. There's a bunch of us who are here. I think most of them are in LA, but there's a bunch of them that are international. And whenever they have parts to record, they just hire a
Yeah.
local studio and record them there.
Wow.
I had a question. Like, do they ever do things where you meet up with the other voice actors, or is it more just like a professional thing? You go, you record for what they ask you to do. Like, is there anything like outside of
like
the
recordings together as
uh,
well.
oh yeah, recordings together, or just outside of like the professional, zone. Do you guys have any sort of like relationship outside? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, we do. I think some of us more than others. I think that because the main for Blizzard for Overwatch, I think the main body of most of the actors are in LA, and they're all really good friends. I think.
Yeah,
I'm
Yeah.
not sure if all of them. There's probably
yeah,
because there's so many of
yeah.
us
I do
now.
see a lot online. I see yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
was, I
you've
was
got.
gonna say I
I
see
mean,
I think it's Mercy, Widowmaker, Lucio. They're always together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
yeah. They're really good friends, and so they have, and Theo gives parties at his house a lot. I think I heard he has a nice pool, and he gives pool parties all
yeah,
the time for people. And they're always, they do things, and
Nice.
you see them at conventions all the time. You see them on social media. They do a lot of things together, and they're really good friends in real life. And I've met a lot of them a bunch of times. They're lovely, lovely, lovely people. But of course, I'm quite far away, so I rarely see them. But Lucy, who is German, but lives in New York, she comes to visit London regularly
Yeah.
because I think she does quite a lot of stand up and she's lived here. She knows people here. So, and it's happened a few times where, she comes to London and she'll let me know and she'll let Kara know. And then Dolya. And then we all meet up. That's happened a few times where we just meet up with a bunch of people. And Carolina and Anjali, they were here, and they always let me know. It's like, hey, I'm in town. Do you want to meet up? And then we do. So yeah, we have met
Yeah.
quite a few times outside of the work environment as well. And then we see each other at conventions, and then of course, we're having fun in the green room and just talking nonsense and having fun. So that's been great because they're really, really, really lovely people. But in terms of working together, we don't really do anything together because everyone is always
Mm.
recorded individually. Um, I don't
yeah,
think Overwatch is the kind of game, it's not like, well, what Red Dead Redemption, for example, where you have
Yeah.
yeah,
characters that are, it's really based on the acting and the interactions and dialogue back and forth between
100%.
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah, the story.
Those games are made with all the people, all the actors in a room, and they actually do
Really.
everything with mocap as well, so that it's more like a conventional acting job where they learn the lines and they come in well prepared. They know exactly what they're going to do. They've probably rehearsed a bunch of times, and then they film it almost as if on a soundstage, as if it's a real film. And that's why the acting in
Yeah.
those games is so good because you get the real back and forth between the actors. Um, and of course, I'm not saying that the acting isn't good in Overwatch, but it's
Yeah,
much
of course.
it's much more individual, right? Because it tends to be
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
lines, and it's much more about the
yeah,
individual characters and how they react to certain
Their
situations
personality.
yeah.
rather
It's
Yeah.
than
it's
how
it's
they
more
react to the
emotional
other
for a game like
characters.
Red Dead. Yeah, yeah. I see that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, yeah. No. What was I had a follow up.
Do you play Overwatch at
Yeah.
all?
Have you ever played? Have you tried it? Have you tried Overwatch?
Yeah, I tried it quite a bit actually when it was still the first game.
Yeah.
And
Really?
then Overwatch 2 came out, and I thought, right, I'm gonna install it because uh, I mean, I'm busy. I've got a family. I've got
Of
Yeah.
a
course. Yeah.
4-year-old daughter, and well, at that time
Wow.
she was much younger. But I've got work. I'm always busy, and I do love video games, and I like to unwind with video games. Um, but I for some reason never really got into like battle royale type games. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like back in the day, I remember everyone was into Halo, and
Oh,
I
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
Halo's the
liked
Yeah.
it,
best.
but because you start the game and then boom, you're dead, and then you respawn,
Yeah.
and boom, and you're dead, and you respawn, and I'm going,
Yeah.
oh gosh. And of course,
No
you have to
fun.
get good at it, and then
Yeah.
that's where you get to have fun. But I guess I never with those games because I'm so short on time. I never really get to that moment where I get to really kind of feel like I know I'm in
Yeah.
Get
control
something
now.
out of it.
I just get shot in the head, and then that's about it. That's my experience with those type of games.
Yeah.
So I'm always kind of reluctant to try a new one when one comes out. But of course, because I was in it, I had to try it, and I did, and I got into it a little bit. I thought it was fun, but again, not enough time, and I got shot too many times. So
Yeah.
and the second one, I said, well, now the second one is out. I really have to get into it because I can't be in this damn
Yeah.
game and not play it. It'd be so fun
Surely,
to
right?
get into this game. And I do like it. It's great. It's good fun. But again, no time, and I get shot constantly on first.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I feel that. I
not
feel
much.
So
that.
I guess
What
you
about you
enjoy
guys?
more like.
Have you guys been
Yeah.
playing it?
Oh yeah.
We play.
Oh
We play
yeah.
a lot.
I played Overwatch 1. I got into 2 like pretty intensely for a while.
Yeah.
I love
Oh,
the
yeah.
game, and I had to mention I have to mention my friend. I mentioned that we're gonna do a podcast with you, and he plays Sigma only, and he just wanted
Yes.
me to let you know that every time he gets a kill, he speaks every voice line that you have. He asked me to say that, so I have to out of respect. But yeah, I play the game a lot. I definitely. So it's definitely fun to do a
Yeah.
podcast with someone who's very like a big part of it, really. But yeah.
Yeah.
What
it's
did you
been a
have?
great-
You said
it's
you
been a
had
great fun game to work
what's
on.
that?
Yeah.
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 I was
it's
gonna
been
say,
a-
so you're more into. Would you say you're more into like story games, considering you were a big part of a game that's heavily revolved around story and nice animation?
Yeah, yeah. I love narrative games, and I mean, there's a balance, right? Because it's also sometimes some games are almost like cinematics, where every now and again you get to press a button, and that can be really
Yeah.
frustrating. Let me do it. I want to do it.
Yeah.
You want to give the player control, and you want to give the player agency, and you want the player to do the actual thing themselves instead of just watching a movie. So it's a fine line, but I do like those moments where you've just played a long stretch of game, and then you get to sit down and get to bathe yourself into a little bit of storytelling, and when that's done well, and I think that we did that quite well on Ori, especially because the art
Yeah.
direction is so beautiful, and then you get the Gareth
Yeah.
Coker, the composer, you get this beautiful musical score, and it's just, if you're into it, then and I completely get that a lot of people aren't into it. They just want to do the gameplay, and whenever they have a conversation with an NPC, it's just like skip, 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 skip.
Skip.
You know, you just want to carry on with it. Come on, I just want to play the damn game. So I do get that, and they skip all cutscenes, and I'm not offended by that at all. But for me, anyway, on that game, that was what I really was working on. Is I did a lot of the animation for the cinematics, and I storyboarded a lot of those cinematics and crafted them. And worked closely with the composer to kind of to go back and forth and to craft those moments really. And I think that was so much fun to do.
I was gonna ask, obviously because you started with animation and like effects and all that stuff to begin with. Was there a specific like film or person or anything that like really inspired you or made you like passionate for that type of like field of work, or like what was it that really got you into it? And then after that, was there someone specific that got you into voice acting as well, or acting in general? Like, how did it work? Like, who did it for you?
Well, it was a lot of the 2D animation that I grew up with, I guess. So, which would have been Disney at the time. They had their big Renaissance period starting in the late 80s and early 90s, when I was of that age where I started to realize, hang on, this isn't real. And I kind of already obviously knew that it wasn't real, but because you just go and watch films for the sake of watching the films, you never really stop to think about it. But I was of that age where I thought, hang on, people actually get paid to work on these films, and people make these films, and that's their job. It was around that time when I think Aladdin came out, and then that was followed by The Lion King. And it was those kind of films, those two, that made me go, oh man, these films are just getting better every year, and they're so damn good.
Yeah.
And people do this for a living. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I think already in the 80s, I was, it was films like, it was Don Bluth did a lot of, it was The Secret of Nim, and a film called An American Tale, that made me go, and I was like, wow, this is something, I don't know, I love this. I love the mood and the atmosphere that's created here. And, but also, lots of live action films, I guess, Back to the Future and E.T.
Yeah, true.
A lot of and Indiana Jones, and just things
that was a
had
big one.
adventure and spectacle and effects. And I remember the first Turtles movie blew me away. These
Yeah.
animatronic suits and moving puppetry, and I thought, and Jim Henson, anything like the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, and I thought this is amazing. It was things like that that really made me excited about films, and that made me want to do that. And then when I was 14, 15, I thought like, right, that's it. I'm gonna work in film, and I'm gonna work in animation. And I guess the voices are just really a kind of a side effect of that I was, while I was figuring out what I would do, drawing or designing, I was also just always acting like an idiot and just pretending to be the characters that I liked, and needing apparently to release that energy and get rid of that energy.
I was gonna ask, is there a character, or like, what would you say? Is there a character that you tried to get the role for? Like, say the biggest character you tried to get the role for and just didn't end up getting it. Like, who was it?
I don't really know. Actually, there is a game recently that I auditioned for and I didn't get it, and it was really big. But you know what? This is what happened with Overwatch. You audition for something without even knowing what the hell you're auditioning for.
Yeah.
Because and I don't really know why that is. I think it's very silly. But they're just very secretive. These people, they don't let you in on what it is that you're auditioning for, and you don't get to see much of a script.
Yeah.
You just see the lines, and it's just a few things, and then you go in and you do it, and you have no idea what it's for. And a lot of these projects have code names, So for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, it was the same.
Really?
I was auditioning, and they often give you a list of like 5 characters. So you audition for 5 characters, and then you end up with 1 or with 2. Or I think I did quite a lot in Valhalla, actually. I auditioned for 5, but I ended up doing 7. But none of the characters I auditioned for. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's really it works like that. They hear your voice and they think, no, you know what? He's not right for this character, but we can use him for this other thing. And that happens a lot as well. And so very often you don't really know what it is that you're auditioning for. And then later you find out when you got the job. Oh yeah, you got the job. Congratulations. And by the way, it's for Overwatch. That's what happened on Overwatch. And I thought, what? Oh, amazing. This is cool. And it takes away a lot of the nerves and the pressure. Although I think that by now there aren't that many nerves and pressure anymore, because it's one of those things where you audition all the time, and a lot of the times you just don't get it. And what also happens a lot of the time is that they give you a job and you don't even know what it is. Oh, they want you for this job. Do you want it? And it's more like, are you available? And I've got this relation with my agency where I don't know what it pays. I don't know if it's a big role or a tiny role, but they just say, we've got this thing for you. Are you available? And are you interested? And I pretty much always say yes, just because I love doing it. And I think it's so much fun. And it's very often not until I'm in the studio that I find out what it is. And I don't really like that, because I would much prefer to have more time to prepare and actually, have a sense that I bring something to the table, rather than kind of just sit and go, well, what are we doing today? But that is kind of how the industry works, unfortunately. And so I'm pretty sure that I missed out on quite a few parts, but I have no idea what they are. And the only one that I do know about is something that I can't really talk about, but it's because of
that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine.
I don't know what the title of the game is, but it's basically, it's a game. It's a little bit like Overwatch. It's a game that is a bit like that. So it's basically one of the main playable characters that I auditioned for. And I thought, oh, this is amazing. And it's going to be apparently this big thing. It may not even be out for another 2 or 3 or 4 years, but it's one of those games. And that's all I can say about it, really. And to be honest with you, I don't really know that much more about it even. But it was one of those games, and I missed out because I did it, and then I went home, and then I didn't ever hear back from them. So, didn't get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow.
I guess you'll find out eventually.
Yeah.
I'm really interested now. I'm getting invested. I want to know what the game was.
If there
me too.
was one thing about the industry, would you say that like you're a little bit annoyed about how the 2D side of things is not really like hasn't been really showing recently. Like it's always been about CGI. But do you think there will be a comeback in 2D in terms of animation and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like an ebb and flow kind of thing, you know, it's up and down and yin and yang.
Mm.
Um, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of grumpy old 2D people who used to work at Disney, and a lot of them I know, and they're great people, they're good animators. But there's a there's a whole section of the world that has been saying 2D is dead, and it's all gone, and it's never coming back,
Yeah.
and I think that's really overly negative. I think actually 2D is there's never been so much 2D now. There's never been so much. There's so much stuff that's being done. It's just that the kind of American like feature animation, big 2D movies that you see in the cinemas, that is not there anymore, you know? And I would love for that to come back. And that's what they refer to
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
they say 2D is dead. And so they're right, but they're also wrong because,
Yeah.
you know, there's little studios like there's a studio in Kilkenny in Ireland called Cartoon Saloon, and they make beautiful films in 2D. And of course, Japan is still pumping out lots of amazing 2D films every year. Yeah, last year, The Boy and the
I know.
Heron. Have you
Yeah.
seen that? It's incredible, beautiful film, completely
Yeah,
Yeah, we
2D.
watched it.
that. Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
yeah, it's slightly
Yeah.
confusing, but it's also just mesmerizing and wow, it really touched me that film. I thought it was
Yeah.
amazing. I want to see it again and again. Um, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of work being done. You know, there's lots of commercials. Television is still very very strong in 2D. You know, you still get
True.
because I think there's something about the tactileness, if that's a word, that people respond to, and students especially, people getting into animation, they're all about the 2D and they want to learn
Yeah.
all about it. And I actually just recently did a tiny little moonlighting gig on the side, doing some 2D work, and it was so nice to
Yeah.
draw. I felt incompetent because I don't really draw that much anymore, so I didn't feel I was that good.
Mm.
But the team I worked with, man, the people there are some artists out there and some animators and some storytellers and some people that are so good at what they do. And they draw beautifully and they create amazing work. So I think there's actually quite a lot of stuff being done. And of course, you can see in the CG side of things that uh, audiences are getting a little fed up with everything looking so homogenous and everything looking the same.
Yeah.
And you know, like Spider-Verse was obviously the big thing that made people go, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Mitchell's versus the Machines, and last year there was the Turtles film, and
Yeah.
people are playing more with stylizing the CG and instead of and of course at the moment it's still
Same thing.
quite safe because it's you know Hollywood's these films cost an absolute fortune to make, and it's only when they know that something's or when they think they know something's going to be successful that they want to commit to financially backing it. So it took something like Spider-Verse to do that, and then of course what you see is all kind of a little bit like Spider-Verse, where they kind of play with you know with hand-drawn effects over the top of the
Yeah.
CG
Yeah.
Frame
to
rate.
make it look
Yeah.
like cartoony or stylized, or as if it's a teenager that drew the whole thing. In the case of Mitchell's
Yeah.
and Turtles, and Nimona was last year was highly stylized, and that looked really cool.
Yeah.
So I think that things are slowly being pushed a bit more, and things are starting to look a bit more interesting, and I'm sure that there's quite a few projects in development right now that when they come out, you know, there's what is it called? Something the robot that's coming out in autumn.
Oh,
What's it called?
the one that's coming out
The
soon.
Wild Robot.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And
one. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
got quite a
Yeah.
stylized look to it. And you had the bad guys from DreamWorks and Puss in Boots. That film was a couple of years ago. DreamWorks. They're really, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
they're
that
really
was a good one.
pushing styles a bit more now. You know, and so I think I think it's interesting times. It's I don't think it's a bleak period. I think it's actually quite a nice, interesting period where people are experimenting and trying new things.
Yeah. I have a question that's a bit off, like different, like subject, but I did want to ask. When you do go to these, actually, I have two questions now that I think about it. But when you go to these, like the cons and all that, and you go to the conventions and all these events, question number one, do you like mainly, do people come up to you and mainly like recognize you for your voice acting in Overwatch, or do they mainly come up for other projects?
No, it's really only Overwatch. Um, and I think that because it's just um, such a big game,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and I think and Sigma is
yeah,
like is one of the main playable characters, right? And I think most of the other parts that I've done,
yeah.
I
It's
mean, I'm
very
still
very
very proud
popular.
of and
Yeah.
very happy with, but they tend to be like NPCs or villains or little characters that are just not quite as major and important. So even if the game's very successful or the TV show, it's not necessarily something that people are aware of or that people know about and or
Yeah,
that gains huge notoriety or popularity. So I think people just don't really know, and that's fine. And I'm also not someone who's every day on social media saying, "Hey, look at me." I'm not really making a lot of noise and trying to sell myself and push myself. And many people have told me, "You're an idiot. You should have done this when Sigma just dropped, and you would have had a big following online." But I've
yeah,
always
Yeah.
felt a little kind of like uncomfortable. Like I don't know, who am I to say that? Oh, I've had eggs for breakfast this morning. Don't you know? Who cares?
yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
so I don't really know how to do that or how to sell myself. I just tend to focus on the work. And as I said, my main thing has been and still is animation, and that also makes me less. I
Yeah.
don't feel like I need to constantly be networking and selling myself as a
oh
voice
yeah.
actor because I'm very happy with the amount of work that I'm doing and with the kind of work that I'm doing. And I'm just generally, I feel like I'm in a really good place. But yeah, that does mean
That's
that
good. Yeah.
I'm only known for this one thing and nothing else.
Mm, that's true.
Until
No, but
something
like,
else
do you
comes
ever
along.
have
Hopefully,
like,
something else will come
yeah?
along.
I mean, I feel like do you ever feel like feel a bit special when someone comes up and be like, I don't know, I know you for things other than Overwatch. Like, does it feel
Yeah,
like
yeah. I
you,
mean,
you know more, huh?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, Ori's been big actually. There's a little show on Netflix called Captain Laserhawk. I don't know if you've
Yes.
heard
Yeah,
of it.
Yes.
yes,
Yeah. I know that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's one of those strange things because when you're working on something, and if you really like it and you really believe in it, and you think this is going to be amazing, and I can't wait for people to see this. Everyone's going to love it. It's going to be big, and sometimes that can run away with you a little bit. It happens pretty much on every film I've ever worked on because you're so invested in what you're doing that you almost get blinded, and you never know if
Yeah.
yeah,
something's going to be massive or flop, or you just never know because it's not until it's done and it's out and it's completely out of your control that people either like it or respond to it or they don't. And with Captain Laserhawk, everyone loved it, or at least you look at Rotten Tomatoes, you look at all the reviews, everyone loved it. Netflix heavily
yeah,
promoted it. There was a
Yeah.
massive light show on Times Square on a billboard where they put the thing up
Oh, really?
wow,
advertising for it. And I thought when I saw this, I thought, oh man, this is amazing. They're really pushing for this thing. And it was dropped, and it was obviously on the main Netflix page for a day or two, and then it just slowly kind of disappeared. And I think Netflix is one of those places where if your show doesn't constantly get that positive feedback loop of it gets bigger and bigger, and it stays in that like top 10, then they're gonna
yeah,
stop promoting it. They're gonna basically they're going to stop doing anything with it. And then it just slowly,
Yeah.
yeah,
or in this case, I think it happened relatively quickly. It just kind of goes away. And
Mm.
yeah, it was a real shame because I thought that everyone would be talking about it for months. But it didn't really happen. And I thought, oh, we're going to get a second season, and then I can't wait for the next one, and that kind of thing. Although
Yeah.
my character dies, so I probably
Oh,
wouldn't have
oh
been in this.
well, oh well,
I'm not
Well,
gonna mention the name of the character then, because
yeah,
you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
know
don't
it.
tell anyone. It's a
I'm
secret.
not gonna say.
yeah, I won't.
But to be fair, it was really like,
You never
at
know.
least from what I remember, it was really popular on like social media and stuff, especially at the time. Obviously, it gets its downfall after like its rise, but it's really funny. It's a really good show for voice acting. Something like that. How's the process? How does the process work? So do you have to voice act first, and then they go off and animate off your voice, or do you get like a storyboard to begin with, and then go off that, and then they fully animate it? How does the process work?
They kind of what they do is they make a storyboard, and they do most of the voices themselves. There was the director and the producer did all of the voices of all of the characters in that in the case of Captain Laserhawk. Um, and all
Really?
the deliveries supposed to be really deadpan and really dry. And actually there was, I think it was mainly one guy who did it. This guy called Belloc. I think he's one of the main guys there. And he ended up doing the frog, um, the
Yeah.
voice of the frog. And but he did all of the voices, and he delivered all of them with his, because it was done in Paris. He's got this thick French accent, and he has a voice as if he smokes cigars all the time. And he's got this really charismatic voice, a really warm, lovely voice. But he did all the characters, and he delivered all the lines in this deadpan kind of way. And I wasn't even joking when I said, I saw this and I said, this is it. You shouldn't, I should go home. You should do all the voices of all the characters, and then that will become the thing that makes this show so weird and different. And they didn't go for it, but I genuinely thought that he did a fantastic job. It was so funny. But that's kind of normal.
Wow.
That's how it goes, and that's actually how I got into voice acting in the first place, because I was doing the temp. You call it scratch voices or temp voices. I was doing the temp voices for this commercial that I was working on, and then I would
Yeah.
go into the studio and record the actors. And the client of the advertising agency kept saying to the actor, "Do it more like the temp, please." And I was frustrated because I was hoping that the actor would act. Because the idea is, of course, that you hire proper actors so that they can plus the voice acting and not just do the same thing.
Mm.
But it's one of those things. Composers
Yeah.
often complain about temp music. Basically, they put a storyboard together with temp voices, temp sound effects, temp music, and everything gets replaced. And it's a really good tool because it gives you exactly an idea of what the thing is going to be more or less like, and it really allows you to play with timing and staging and get a real feel, a real sense of the rhythms and how everything's going to sound. But the downside of that is that you get really used to those sounds. And so when you finally hear something else, there's always a little voice that says, that's not quite right, because it's not what I'm used to. It's not what I know. It's not what I. So there's,
Yeah.
as a director and as anyone who works on these things, you have to be able to distance yourself from that and redo the whole process from scratch, really, as if it's the first time, when you record the actors and when you work with the composer and with the sound designer, so that you don't, get too stuck on these ideas that were in there for so long. But that's how I got in. I said to the client after the recording, of course, I said, "Hey, psst, that was me doing all the temp stuff. So next time, if you like that so much, I can do it for you. I'm available." And they actually said yes. So that's how I got into and then I thought, hey, this is fun. Let's record a little demo and let's see if I can get into this properly. And then I found an agent, and then I was working. But yeah, they usually do a storyboard first, and then I watched that in the case of Captain Laserhawk on the screen with the temp voices. And then so I was roughly following the timing of the storyboard, and then they turn off the temp voice, and then I just do it to the boards roughly. But sometimes there are no boards, sometimes there's nothing. But yeah, they always record the voice first, and then they give that to the animators to do the lip sync and to make it move properly. So they animate to your voice. But it's funny. There's a short film
Hey.
that hopefully will be released very soon. There's a guy in the States, amazing 2D animator called Josh Schneider, and he's been handcrafting this short Western, this film, over the last, I think it's been more than 10 years, yeah. And because he's got a
Wow.
full-time job, he's been doing this in his spare time, so he hasn't been working on it full-time. But as a hobby, as a side project, every now and again, he keeps chipping away at it. And he asked me if I wanted to do the voices or some voices for him. And I recorded them more than 10 years ago, and I haven't seen or heard this thing
Wow.
since then. And now he's
Wow.
about to release it, so I can't wait to see what he's done with it. But I recorded it
Do you
from
think you might feel a bit
home.
weird seeing your old voice?
Yeah, I think so. Well, here's the thing. So he asked me a few days ago. He said, "Hey, um, because I was living. This was before I did a lot of work as a voice actor. So I was
Yeah.
recording with a crappy mic in a room with noises and traffic in the background. And that was fine at the time, but he listened to it back because now he's doing his post-production and his sound mix. And he said, you know what? I think it might be your voice kind of stands out because it's just the quality of the audio isn't that great. And so what we're going to do is I'm probably going to redo the whole thing, matching the animation that he's done. So I basically have to, it's probably a case of, and that happens a lot and that happened a lot in this game that I've done, No Rest for the Wicked. It's the same kind of setup where I did a lot of the temp voices, and that's how because I worked at Moon on Ori, and then we went into this other game, No Rest for the Wicked, and they never cast me to do loads of voices. I was just there already, helping them with the storyboarding and the narrative stuff, and I just gave them a bunch of the temp voices for a lot of characters, so everyone got a sense of, what it would all become, and then eventually they started to replace me with a lot of other actors, and they started to do proper voice recordings in studios. But they did end up casting me as a bunch of those characters as well. So, but they liked, and this is, I think, one of the things I mentioned earlier, where they got so used to the voices as they were recorded that they wanted pretty much exactly the same. So I wasn't even allowed to, or sometimes I was, but very often they said, no, we want it exactly the same way because that's what animation has been using already for the timing. So we're going to play you the line, and then we want you to re-record it exactly the same way right after. So I was basically just copying myself, but in a professional studio environment. So it's exactly the same performance, but recorded professionally, sounding nice. And I think that's what I'm going to have to do for Josh as well. And sometimes that happens. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. It's a very long-winded answer, but it's basically storyboard first, then
it's good. Honestly,
then the animation.
I'm the type of guy that I just like listening to someone who has a genuine passion about something cool. Just ramble on. I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me if it's long, short answer.
And I'm interested in it. We're interested in the same stuff too. So it's
into
good.
it. We're into the whole thing. So if someone's talking about it, I'm more it's more like attentive listening. I'm trying to learn as well,
And if there's someone, for example, in voice acting or trying to get into the voice acting industry, and then also for CGI or 2D animation, how would what would their first steps be, in your opinion, to get into something like that?
In this day and age,
Yeah.
I think it's both much easier and both much harder now than it was 10, 20 years ago. I think that obviously the internet's made everything so super easy to get. You can get information anywhere. You can get addresses from all the agencies, from all the casting directors, from all the studios. Whether or not they're hiring, what they're looking for, all that stuff is just so easy to find now. So you'd have to be pretty dim to not be able to find all that information very, very easily. You just have to play detective, If you know what you want, if it's voices, okay, well then who are the agencies? Because most of the, a company like Blizzard, they're not going to... put out an ad in the local papers or on Facebook or whatever to say that they're looking for the next actor. So they will go to casting directors, and the casting directors will often contact a lot of agencies around the world. And so it's really only the clients with those agencies that get a chance to audition. Now, that's still loads of people. So they don't need any more than that. So you're never going to hear about how you... So if you want to be in one of those games, you have to get an agent. And an agent only will sign you if you have shown that you are, that you're good at what you do. And so at the start, that's a bit of a catch-22 situation because, and a friend of mine had it recently who wanted to get into it, and I put in a good word for him, and I said, to my agents, hey, check this guy out. But they said, well, we only represent professionals and people who've done the work. But then he rightfully said, yeah, but I can only get the work if I'm signed by you. How do I get the work in order to show you that I've done the work so that you'll give me the work, So that's hard. And the only thing you can do, and it's the same with animation, you're only going to be hired by a studio to be an animator if you can show that you can do that job, if you've animated something successfully. But of course, the software is there. The YouTube tutorials are there. You can go to to colleges for it. I'm sure there's stuff with voices as well. I don't know if that's a thing or if that's a waste of time. I don't know. I think
be.
that
Yeah.
people have an instinct for it or they don't. And if they have an
Yeah,
instinct
some
for
people
it,
are
then
born with like voice box like, things.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, it's also for actors, there's lots of workshops and there's lots of kind of training, but I always think like, oh, it's, there's a whole industry out there to make money off of the backs of those poor people trying to get into the industry, and I always think it's a bit
Yeah.
dubious in a way. I think that there's so much
Sketchy.
free stuff out there in terms of information that you can just, you can learn how to be an animator without spending a penny. There's so many YouTube tutorials out there. You can
Yeah.
get student versions of software, or you invest a little bit into it, and you can learn how to do this stuff, and then you put together a show reel with your work. So as an animator, and again, all the information is out there because there are whole seminars on YouTube of people who are successfully working within the industry, at Pixar or Disney or whatever. They tell you the studios want to see this. They want to see body mechanics. They want to see weight. They want to see walks. They want to see an acting out of a dialogue scene. There's all these little pieces that you can put focus on and put together in order over the course of, it probably take you a good few months, if not longer, because they, and there's internships, there's trainee programs at a lot of the studios. But there you'd have to basically already be doing it. And I think it's the same with voices. You have to just have a passion for doing that. Record yourself a lot, doing different types of characters, voices. Do a lot in your own natural voice, because I think that even though, it's fun to do a voice and be silly and shout and scream, and it's also highly annoying for people to have to listen to someone going, beep, 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 beep. I think most people are cast based on something that is very, very close to their own natural voice.
Natural.
And so you have to really showcase that in your demos as well. And then, you just keep doing it. And after a while, you'll hopefully have enough material. You cut together a little demo reel, and then you send that out. And if you're an animator, you send a show reel with some animation tests, and you send it to the studios, and you send it to the companies, and they'll look at it. And very often they'll, even if they don't hire you, that sometimes people take the time to give you advice and say, well, work on this a little bit more, work on that a little bit more. And there's whole forums out there, man, and on Facebook groups, and there's all sorts of, where people post their stuff and they get feedback from industry professionals. And so it's really, it's still hard work, of course, and you have to do a lot of it. But I think the path towards that is quite clear. So that's the easy
paved out.
The hard part is that so many people want to do it that, of course, you will be competing with a lot of other people. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
So you gotta kind of stand out and get good at what you do.
Yeah. I mean, you're not gonna get anywhere if you're not good at it, which fair enough. But there are still a lot of people I see online, on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever, that have there are self-taught on animations, on
Blender,
like
Maya, like those softwares
have some amazing creations, amazing things, which I find really cool. But I mentioned I had two questions before, but I didn't get to the second one because we just had so many others. We were talking about the conventions, and I wanted to know. What is the most interesting or like out of the like ordinary thing someone has asked you to say in a character's voice?
I can't remember. There was one, they wanted to hear something disgusting, because people have dirty minds and they want to they want to hear the most disgusting.
That makes sense.
I can't remember what it was, but it was
what do you even do? Like, what do you say to them? Like, when they've asked you to say something like that, how do you like? Do you have to turn them down? Like, what do you do then? Like, how awkward does it get?
Yeah, I don't know. It depends on the mood as well. I mean, if I think it's funny and if I'm in a good mood, then of course I'll do it, because people are just think it's funny, and you just make someone laugh, and if it makes their day, then it's fine. But sometimes it's like, oh, really? You want me to say that? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I've
it makes
turned
sense.
people down, but very rarely. I think most of the time it's just a laugh, isn't it? And it's just a bit of fun, so
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I think when it's in, even if it's in a convention where lots of other people can hear, I still do it. But as soon as people start to film it and they want to record it, then I say, you know
Yeah.
what? Let's not do that one today because I don't know what they're going to do with that.
Yeah.
So
You never know.
Exactly.
that's kind of, because there's this thing called Cameo,
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
where you give birthday shout outs and I'm on there. So every now and again I get a request. Oh, it's my friend's birthday. Can you wish him happy birthday, etc. And that's always fun. But sometimes I've had those types of requests on there, and those I say I'm sorry, but I'm not really comfortable with that
Yeah.
because you record yourself, audio, video.
You're gonna have
You
to
look
watch that back.
back at it
thing.
and you're like,
this is the one. Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah, in my own
Yeah.
room here, and then you don't know what they're gonna do with it. So,
There's.
but 9 out of 10 times it's just a bit of fun, and sometimes it's something that I have no idea what the hell they even mean, because it's something that is so specific. Because people have their own names and their own language and their own
Yeah.
words and nicknames for each
Yeah.
other. And hey, can you say? And it's almost like a foreign language.
Yeah.
yeah.
And they want me to say it, and I go, well, okay, fine. But yeah, I'm sorry that I wish I had a nice.
No,
Nice,
that's
that's
fine.
fine.
Like, I'm sure you've been to a million conventions and stuff, and you've had to turn down obviously a fair amount of people. Like, it's not. I'm assuming like if it's that bad, we didn't need to hear it anyways. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like, we can live without it. We can live without it.
Got it.
Yeah. Do you ever catch yourself like saying some like just bursting into character when you're alone at home or something, and then be like, what am I even doing?
No, no,
That would be funny.
no. It's
Sigma never just comes out of nowhere, just like sing for me.
Oh yeah, I guess I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I go, or yeah, I don't know. Sometimes he comes out a little bit, but it's more sounds than things I say.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, because I mean, for me, as much as I love Sigma and I love that character and I think it's wonderful,
Yeah.
but it's a job that it's 5 years ago. And of course, every now and again,
Yeah.
they ask me back for lines because they thankfully,
for new characters.
it keeps
Yeah.
it fresh
Yeah.
and they keep adding to the lines and they come up with new stuff. Although I think it's been more than 6 months now since I don't know when the last time
Wow.
is getting on a bit, but at least once or twice a year they ask you back to do a few things, so it kind of keeps the character alive in you as well. But other than that, the main body of work was all done 5 years ago, and because I don't play the game all
Yeah.
the time every day, I'm not, the character
Yeah.
isn't, I'm not constantly, because if you play it all the time, of course you hear it every day, but I don't.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
not something that is, it feels almost like, it's just something that I did a while ago. And every now and again, I'm
Yeah.
asked to do it again, but it's not like I'm constantly living this guy every day, I know that's very disappointing, but
I hear that.
That's the
No,
way it
no,
is.
no, 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 no.
We-
Like
we appreciate
that-
like
yeah, the whole Overwatch like similar like thing. I understand you've definitely heard like I'm sure like most of the people do end up coming to you talking about that. So I know you've spoken enough about it or you've
Yeah.
heard enough about it.
that's why we wanted
like-
to speak about the
yeah.
other side of things, like the CGI, the animation. Like we wanted to make sure everything was included. So like we really appreciate you coming on today and telling us everything, all your stories. And if you're ever in Australia again, I don't understand why I didn't see it. I should have. I follow you and everything, so I don't know why. But that's my fault. Next time we'll definitely make something happen if you're available.
And if you're down for another recording,
absolutely.
like sometime
Yeah.
in the future, we're more than happy to have you back on again. I barely got even through like a third of what I wanted to ask. I can't lie.
Yeah, there's still more.
Yeah.
But we try to cap it at an hour, so
Sure.
but
That's
hopefully
all right.
we'll see you again soon.
But no,
Yeah, that'd be
wait.
great.
Okay, I don't know if you care about doing it or not. But can you say a voice line, please? Can you say Sigma? Do you know like the Sigma main voice line? You know the universe is singing to me. Like I need this in my life right now. I'll be honest.
The universe sings to me.
Yes, it's so good. It's so good.
Thank you very much, Boris.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
coming on, and we'll see you soon. And thank you guys for listening to this episode of EasyCast. And make sure you check him out on everything. Play Overwatch as well. Watch everything. Play Ori, the game, and just everything that's got to do with Boris. Make sure you check it out. And yeah, thank you for coming on, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you.